Hello and welcome to our London History Podcast, where we share our love of London, its people, places and history in 20-minute espresso shot episodes, served with a dash of personality. I am Hazel Baker, qualified London tour guide and CEO of London Guided Walks, providing private tours, treasure hunts and live London quizzes to Londoners and visitors alike. To accompany this podcast, we also have hundreds of London history-related blog posts for you to enjoy at londonguidedwalks.co.uk/blog. And it's a week for celebrating, as we have hit the amazing milestone of 3,000 listeners. Now, I am beyond proud and thankful not only for you, my lovely listeners, but also for our expert guests for sharing their love of London. Now, don't forget, if you want to be a guest, then please do get in touch via our website, londonguidedwalks.co.uk/podcast. Don't forget, from 4th of July, we will be offering private tours, treasure hunts and live London quizzes to private groups, all COVID-19 secure. And now, on with the show. I have a confession. In my recents folder on my iPhone, I have 64,476 photos. That's not including all the ones that I've taken on my other phones or indeed my camera. 64,476. These are photos that I've taken, some with great care, and others admittedly were just quick snapshots while whizzing around the city. For those of you who have been to Laycock Abbey in Wiltshire will already know the first photographic technologies were produced there in the 1830s and 40s by William Henry Talbot. He was a Victorian polymath, and frustrated by his inability to paint and draw, I know that feeling, he wanted to find a way to fix images. Little did he know that with the invention of photography, it would revolutionise culture and communication in the West forever. For the first time, images of real life could be captured for posterity and sent across the world. Portraits of royalty and other celebrities, far more accurate than paintings, allowed members of the public to feel that they were viewing these people in the flesh. And how different would it have been if Henry VIII had seen a photo of Anne of Cleves rather than a beautified painting? The dead could be remembered, the fleeting could be fixed, and that's where today's guest comes in. Colin Webb runs the Facebook page History in Colour, and it's all about making history more accessible and telling the stories we as a culture may have forgotten. And he does this by adding colour to black and white photos. I know when you're adding colour, you try and be historically accurate as possible, but how do you know these colours they would have been wearing?
I work with the tones of the original image, and I try to keep things as historically accurate as possible. So a good example is I done one recently of some working class sort of poor children in Victorian slums, and the tone suggested to me they was wearing dark clothing. So it was common for poor children in the rookeries in the slums of Victorian London to wear dark, warm clothing. So dark greys, blacks, dark browns, and again they would have been dirty and stuff like that. So I wouldn't have chosen bright colours for them. Whereas your richer, upper class, middle class children, they wearing dresses, they would have been, again, you would have had reds and greens and lighter, brighter colours again because they would have been cleaner and not so worn down and sort of culturally appropriate as well.
One that really shows the depravity is the rat catcher children that you did.
Yeah. That was quite a good one. I enjoyed doing that. It was a part of sort of history that doesn't really get often told. And again, that's the whole reason why I do it. I like taking those stories that sort of get forgotten and make them come alive and sharing those stories. And, young children did go out and do what we'd consider to be, those horrible jobs today.
Do you want to tell the listeners how they caught the rats?
There was a famous rat catcher called Jack Black. He was a rat catcher for Queen Victoria. And that was definitely one of the methods he'd use. He'd use I think he used sweet smelling perfumes and smells that he rubbed onto his hands and sort of rummage around and he'd trap rats that way. You see, I think in the photograph I did, you had with the children, it had ferrets there as well.
Yes.
So the ferrets would go into the walls and, into the holes and stuff like that and chase the rats out. You have a dog there, a terrier, because they'll catch it. Any rats that's still alive will be beaten over with a stick. That photo, I believe, was taken about 1900, 1901. That's sort of right at the very end of the Victorian period. But certainly before then, sort of 1850s, 1860s, a lot of the rats were sold to pubs for rat baiting and stuff like that, and to pharmacists to come up with rat poisons.
Yep.
Yeah, so that's the main reason why I like choosing the images I do, to tell these stories that aren't told that much, if that makes any sense.
No, it makes perfect sense, actually. We talk about rat baiting hotly in the hole, and that was our previous episode. So it was perfect timing that you'd done this image. Actually, it just brings it all sort of back. It's different reading about the history when you start seeing people. It just makes it more real, doesn't it?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it just makes it more accessible.
And how did you find these stories, Cole?
A lot of it is my love for history, really. I've been obsessed with history for most of my life. And over the last sort of 5-6 years, particularly the Victorian period, not just London, but as a whole of Britain. And it's stuff I learnt about. I've watched documentaries, I've been reading books. I've known for years about things like Knuckle Rockers and, like I said, the rat catchers and the mudlarks and the toshers. Just finding out the stuff that isn't talked about much, the forgotten stuff. But it's purely just research books and the internet, really, more than anything.
And some people listening might not realise what a Knuckle Rocker is, so I think you need to describe that.
Okay, so a Knuckle Rocker. So these were generally men who owned timepieces. So this is in the sort of mid to late Victorian period, where most people could own a watch or a timepiece or any form. And obviously they had to get up to go to the mill or, factories, that sort of stuff. And needed to make sure to made there on time. So someone would go out, buy a timepiece, and then go around to the houses and the pubs and say, look, if you pay me, then I'd ensure you'll wake up in the morning. So they'd go around the streets early hours in the morning with a massive long stick and knock on the windows. And that was their job. And that's what they did for many, many years.
All these jobs, that modern technology has taken away and we've completely forgotten about. You've also done a couple of Florrie Ford, the musical singer. So she's wearing a very impressive hat with lots of fake flowers. How did you choose the reds in that one?
Again, it's historical research. So, through reading books and making sure I get the colours right. So I wouldn't have gone for someone like Florrie Ford. Again, a music hall singer, so she would have been on stage. She would have written something a bit flamboyant. From what I've read about her recently, and I've only really found out about her recently, to be fair, she's quite flamboyant, so I don't think she would have gone for anything plain. I don't think she would have gone for whites. She may have gone for blues, but a red was more of a common colour, especially for music hall performers. So that's why I went for that, really. I'm sort of playing it safe, because obviously, there's no way of telling of what colours these people actually wore. So it's just using educated guesses.
And you do private commissions as well?
I do those for free, because I put on one of my blurbs on my page, I don't think anyone should have to pay for their own history. So I do those completely for free. Sometimes they can be quite enjoyable, sometimes they can be an absolute nightmare depending on the quality of the photo. But I do try my best, and when people do send me these pictures, I do say to them, look, particularly if they're in bad condition, I say, look, I will see what I can do. But, unfortunately, I can't promise miracles. But I do enjoy that, and I do enjoy doing it for people.
I think it's really nice that you offer that service, because this is the skill that a lot of people don't have, Cole. One of my favourites is the Debutante Photo as her standing in a corseted, long white trained dress with her headdress and her flower bouquet, looking very proud. And of course, being presented at court was something that was started by George III in 1780. We don't have it now because it ended in 1914, but that's a very, very nice photo.
That was really good to work with. I enjoyed that.
And how long would something that is of good quality, how long would that take you if you sat down and put into it?
anything between, if it's really good quality and let's say it's a really good quality portrait with nothing in the background, probably about half hour, 40 minutes, something like that, not very long. Something as intricate as the one with the woman standing on the stairs, which your listeners hopefully look at my page and they'll see. That was about an hour to maybe a bit more, probably about an hour and a half, 2 hours. Again, but that's purely because I felt that's purely because it was a nice clear image. There wasn't that much detail on the dress, and the flowers were very easy to work with as well. I had one through recently from a museum of VE Day, and it was a street party. I think there was about 20 people in it, and that took me about a week to do. I was lucky. That was in really, really good detail. Really, really good detail. But what I have to do is, it's like taking one image and having to do it 20 times because I have to colour each person individually. Mm-hmm. And then do the background, and then do the flags, and then zoom in and do all the minor details.
Yeah.
So poor quality images again depends on how many people in a photograph. Really, like a poor quality image is one person, maybe about 2-3 hours.
And so, what inspired you doing the one of Tower Bridge with the family making sand castles?
Oh, the beach. Tower Bridge Beach.
Yeah.
I knew when I first heard about Tower Bridge Beach. Probably about 10, 11 years ago, something like that. And I just thought it was absolutely insane that you had this, essentially what was a seaside resort beach in the middle of London, because we don't see London as a sort of a seaside town. And it's not, but, I just thought it was insane. There was this by Tower Bridge, there was this beach there where people used to go down there and sunbathe and play in the Thames. And, I thought that was absolutely brilliant. And it's a story of people that, most of those people live outside London, actually, that was sort of forgotten about, and when I think I put it up on the old London Photographs group, and it's on my page as well. Mm-hmm. When I put it up there was a few comments. A lot of people thought that it was fake, that I, got a photoshopped a picture of a beach and Tower Bridge, and, a lot of people thought that was fake. And it wasn't until I put a link up on a group to a company now that own what remains of the beach, that he sort of said, oh, okay, yeah, it is true. And I put the Wikipedia link up, and he went, oh, yeah, I've read it now. And he finally was convinced. But just like I said, just those little stories people forget about, that sort of think, nah, that can't be right. And it turns out it is true.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, you think of London Beach, you think it's some hippie thing on the South Bank nowadays.
Yeah. Tower Bridge had, I think it's, I'm not sure how long it was in operation for, up to the Second World War, I think it was.
Yes, that's right. The beach was officially opened in July 1934, and King George V declared the area was to always be free for the city's children to use. It's estimated that over 500,000 visitors to Tower Beach attended between 1934 and 1939. Now, children from surrounding areas would be able to play on the sand, parents would be able to chillax on deck chairs, and that's what this photograph shows. And also toffee apples will be available, and that's something that we forget because it's usually something that is available during bonfire night on the 5th of November rather than something that you'd have for a sunny summer's day. Visitors were also allowed to go under Tower Bridge and back again for the cost of threepence, which is about 2.5p now, and it rivaled the seasides of Southend, Dymchurch and Brighton. End to end, Colin, the final picture I wanted to talk about is a darkened alleyway with houses on either side and that look like they're ready to fall apart. Can you tell us a little bit more about that one?
Oh, yeah, I know the one you mean. The one I forget what it is now. I know the one you mean, though. I think that's a Limehouse or something like that.
Yep, well, that'll make sense.
I sort of lowered the temperature in the image, and I did a lot of snow in there. And I did that for a couple of reasons. So obviously a bit of artistic license and that. I like to keep my images as historically accurate as possible. A little bit of artistic license in that one. So I did it because there's a poor area of London, and I changed the scene to winter, Victorian sort of winter time, sort of closer to Christmas time. So lots of snow coming down. So the first snows, which I think in modern times, when we think of Christmas time, particularly Victorian Christmas, it makes us feel happy and 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 think, oh, that's really nice, it's a really romantic image. But obviously at the time, particularly for the working classes, winter would have been, horrific. Seeing those first snowdrops, those first bits of snow come down would have been, a really, really bad sign, because obviously it means they can't work, or it's harder to work, which means less money comes in the house and stuff like that. So that's why I put that in there.
We forget that, we have proper roads and pavements and that now. We forget that, when we look at this image, and I hope my listeners do, you see the central, where all the refuse would have just been pushed to the middle of the street. You see how crooked not only the windows and the doors are, but houses themselves. I mean, they look like they're holding each other up.
Yeah. Oh yeah, these buildings are just thrown up, literally just thrown up.
Yeah, it's done really well to remind us how lucky we are nowadays. I mean, we might be stuck at home trying to save the NHS, but we have something to lose, whereas they had very little.
Exactly.
Thanks very much for coming on the show, Colin, and sharing your love of London history. You are among friends.
That's right. Thank you very much for having me.
So hopefully by now you are itching to see these colorised photos that Col has done. And you can do that by visiting CR Webb History in Colour Facebook page. And I will provide a link in the show notes. So that about wraps it up for our latest episode. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you haven't already, can I please ask you to leave a review? It's really, really easy, and I have left simple instructions on the show notes. And for those of you who have already taken the time to write these 5-star reviews that are coming in, I really do appreciate it. Thanks so much. And don't forget, this is your chance to guide the guides as well. So if there is a subject, an area, a particular Londoner that you want us to cover, then let us know. And there's a link in the show notes as well for you to do that. And if you are absolutely busting to share your knowledge and love of London, then you need to let us know so you can come on just like Col. And of course, once again, I'm going to sound like a broken record in this digital age, but link is in the show notes. And before you ask, that's londonguidedwalks.co.uk/podcast. Thanks again, and see you next time.